to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So looking at the agenda, I was just speaking with Dr. Bossert. We have some students here that are going to be commended, and rather than have them sit through the budget hearing, is okay with everyone if we change the order a little bit?
Ask the kid.
You guys want to hear the budget presentation? I don't think so. Okay, so let's just do approval of minutes first. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes of April 4th and April 30th? Mrs. Manuelito, second by Mrs. Weiss, all in favor, 5-0. Thank you. And let's get to commending our students, because that's the most exciting part of the meeting.
I would happen to
No
agree.
offense.
I agree.
Budget people.
I agree with that remark. Yes, we have a number of outstanding students here tonight to recognize. We have amazing children doing amazing things each month, and it's a shame we have to limit our time to recognizing just a few at each board meeting, but we appreciate the board giving us the opportunity to do so. So to begin our recognition tonight, I'd like to call upon our Director of Math, Science, and Technology, Ms. Eileen Kelly-Gorman.
Good evening, and thank you for having me tonight, and for the opportunity to honor two of our very talented high school students. I've had the privilege of watching each of these students since they were at Boyd, demonstrating their ability to think critically and problem solve in STEM areas. The first student I would like to recognize this evening is Benjamin Farina. Each year, Brookhaven National Labs hosts a bridge building competition for high school students to promote the study and application of principles of physics and engineering. So through participating, students experience what it's like to be an engineer. They design structures to set specifications and then see them perform their desired functions. This year, 132 students from 15 high schools registered bridges. 52 students representing 9 schools qualified for the competition. We are very proud that 25 of those students were from our own John Glenn High School. Ben's bridge was granted the Aesthetic Award for Best Looking Design. Ben used an arch design and said that he wanted to improve upon the design he used in middle school when he set out to do his project this year. When asked about Ben's project, his teacher, Mr. McGuire, said that Ben is a hard worker, pays attention to detail, and is a perfectionist in his work. Ben's looking forward to expanding his design skills in production systems next year. Congratulations, Ben.
My apologies. My apologies. Oh,
There you go. The last one.
Our second honoree tonight is also a sophomore at John Glenn. Rithika Narayan has received multiple honors this past year for her work in both math and science fields. This past summer, Rithika began her research at Angian Biomedica, a Long Island-based research and development facility. Her project earned her the opportunity to advance to the second round of the Al Kalfas Long Island Math Fair, where she ultimately won gold honors for her presentation titled A Mixed Lattice Approach for the Determination of the Area of Irregular Curved Plane Regions. That's why I needed notes tonight. In the science field, Rithika advanced from the Long Island Science and Engineering Fair tournament to the New York State Science and Engineering Fair, where she placed third in the math category. We're all extremely proud of Rithika and look forward to all that she will accomplish in her remaining time at John Glenn, beginning, of course, with her next round of research, which she's yet to determine, that she'll begin this summer. So congratulations, Rithika. We're very proud of you. And here is Coach Shanahan. I'm very grateful to go ahead of and not have to follow this evening.
Dr. Bossert, Board of Education, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight before excellent Elwood All-Stars we have coming up here tonight. Our outstanding students were recognized by the Suffolk Zone last Thursday. For those who do not know, the Suffolk Zone of New York State Association for Health, Education, Recreation, and Dance is proud to recognize one boy and one girl from each elementary, grade 5, and middle school, grade 8 in Suffolk County for his or her outstanding performance in physical education program, combining leadership, empathy, caring, hard work in their classrooms. I also like to bring up Coach Giraldi here. On a sidebar note, Coach Giraldi's team in tennis, varsity team, is League 2 champs in tennis. And he's nothing better, and he was recognized as Coach of the Year as well. Congratulations. So in conjunction with our staff, Ms. Weiss and Mr. Giraldi at Boyd, and our 3 teachers at the middle school, Ms. Miggett, Mr. Sicoli, and Mr. Levy, they chose the candidates. So our Elwood All-Stars are as follows. From Boyd, the young lady has a great future. Her sister's run on our track team as an 8th grader on the varsity. So great sports family. Megan Lamena, please come on up. And the male winner from the Boyd School is Christopher Massiot. Come on up, Christopher. Great energy from our students. And from the Elwood Middle School, our female winner is Sophia Pelkovsky. Come on up. And our male winner from the Elwood Middle School, Connor Monclova. Come on up. We will make sure Connor gets his award tomorrow in the middle school. But anyway, folks, congratulations on behalf of Dr. Bossert, the PE staff at both Boyd and at the middle school, and obviously myself. Congratulations. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for your care. We really appreciate all you do. Thank you so much.
One more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Don't move. Any parents want to take pictures?
Parents, would you like photos?
There we go.
Thanks. Very good.
Congratulations to the student, it really is the best part of the meeting when we get to recognize people that really deserve it. Congratulations. We're gonna bring up Annie's song for an update on what's going on in the district, and then we'll let the students go home if they want to, unless they're dying to hear the rest of the meeting. Here you go, Annie.
Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to be here as the weather's finally seeming to be warming up. As I missed last month's meeting, please bear with me as I report the recent buzz in our district. With the start of AP testing this week, the high school has been flooded with review sessions and hard work. Advanced placement testing will extend from this past Monday, May 6th to Friday, May 17th. We would like to wish all students diligently preparing for their exams good luck. Ms. Correa, our lovely ASL teacher and April's noble knight, has passed the title to Diane Warren, our lovely Spanish teacher. John Glenn High School is happy to announce that the third and final graduation speaker for the class of 2019 has been chosen. Through a shared decision-making initiative to revitalize the graduation ceremony, the class of 2019 underwent a process in which they chose a student speaker in addition to the valedictorian and salutatorian. The summa cum laude group created a list of words that they believed epitomized their class as a whole. These words were then put out to all seniors with the message asking them to nominate one member of the class who embodied the characteristics and who they feel proud to have represent them. The results of the survey were quite clear. The summa cum laude group agreed with the majority of their classmates and decided to invite one very special young man to be the graduation speaker. I am incredibly happy to report that Nikki Weiss has accepted the nomination of his peers and will be speaking at the class of 2019's graduation on June 28th. Additionally, our Kickline team helped our teachers dance the night away at Dancing with the Teachers. A few notable performances are Mr. Harrington, Mr. Chestnut, and Mr. Pushy blowing students away with their step routine, and Ms. Lucasio and Ms. Sherwood's dazzling duet. College acceptances have been announced, and we are proud to be sending students to the next step in their educational journey. A few notable schools such as Yale University, Princeton University, Cornell University, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, George Washington University, and Villanova University are lucky to have our students. On April 12th, middle and high schoolers took a stand for students across the country who feel they cannot speak freely about their sexual orientation, have been bullied and permanently silenced by suicide. The Day of Silence was officially observed for the first time to break the silence. Inspirational speaker Jared Fox spoke about the oppression that the LGBTQ+ community faces. John Glenn is making strides towards creating an even more affirming and safe environment for every student. The shared decision-making team is happy to announce that the school Instagram has been launched. This will be a multifaceted resource for students in the coming school years. Although I may not be here to see the fruition of the Instagram account's success, I am positive that the account will be an effective resource for the student body. A few things students can check out on the account are sports highlights, Mindfulness Mondays, Student of the Month, and major announcements. Be sure to check out the account at WeAreJGHS.
Pause. Would you like to explain to the board the Ask Annie portion of the Instagram?
Oh, yeah. So, the Ask Annie portion is going to be, John Glenn alumni answering questions on their high school experience, and I'm sure there will be positive answers.
Oh, so you're gonna answer as a college student?
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
On my lovely experience attending all 4 schools at the Elwood district.
Nice.
As always, we have students to congratulate for their tremendous accomplishments. For starters, our talented cast, pit, and crew members have been nominated for the 2019 Huntington Tony Awards. The following students have been nominated for the corresponding categories: Omolola Adewale, Best Featured Actress in a Musical; Felipe Gonzalez, Best Lead Actor in a Musical and Best Male Vocalist; Princess Oneonta, Best Supporting Actress in a Musical; and Best Female Vocalist, Caitlin Rossi, Best Lead Actress in a Musical, and Terrence Sheldon, Best Supporting Actor in a Musical. Members have been selected to perform at the award ceremony this year on June 3rd, and we are so proud of the students who make the music department what it is. Speaking of music, our talented musicians from all over the district will be performing at NISMA on May 17th at Walt Whitman High School. We have exciting things going on with Elwood Athletics. The tennis team won their league championship title for Division I, League 2 with a 9-1 record and an overall score of 11-1. Coach Giraldi has been nominated by his peers to be this year's Coach of the Year. The boys lacrosse team is having an outstanding season under Coach Rogner and holds a 12-3 league record. Our girls lacrosse team are battling it out in a tough league and hold a record of 4-9, and they played their senior game against Rocky Point just this afternoon. The baseball team has a league record of 1-9, but the game against Harborfields brought in a large crowd. Students, parents, and family members packed the seats at Huntington Tri-Village to see the Battle of the Borders. The softball program is picking up well-earned success under Coach Nardelli, and the girls worked hard to earn a league record of 3-10. The team beat Shoreham, a long-standing rival, and with this win, the team definitely boosted the morale. The boys track team holds a record of 1-3, and the girls track team holds a record of 2-2. Both teams are competing in a very tough league. The senior girls on the track team celebrated Senior Day against Mount Sinai, the best team on the island, but our girls turned this challenge into motivation and worked even harder. Our outstanding freshmen Sophia Condren and 8th graders Emily Lamena and Grace Mata have been leading the success for the long-distance events. Laura Taylor and Adam Mastarita have been named Scholar Athletes by the town of Huntington, and the students will be receiving their award at the town board and proudly present a short biography along with the school they will be attending next year. The Della Cave Award recognizes the most decorated senior male and female athletes from each high school in Suffolk County, and we are proud to name Mia Sergel and Kyle Zaccoli as recipients. Nominees were chosen on the basis of outstanding athletic ability as well as having displayed exceptional character and integrity. In addition to this honor, each award recipient is provided with a $1,000 scholarship. We look forward to see the continued success at Glenn in the coming month. Just to peek into the month of May, College T-shirt Day will be on May 21st, and academic awards for seniors will be the following night on May 22nd at 7 p.m. Our valedictorian Yeji Lee will be honored at the valedictorian luncheon at the Villa Lombardi on May 30th, and our chamber strings was invited to play. Come check out the annual Triumph recital this Saturday at the Elwood Public Library at 2 p.m. The spring concert will be on May 21st, and the second spring concert will be on the 29th. Additionally, there will be a distracted driving presentation for 11th graders looking to apply for a parking permit next school year on May 30th. So many wonderful and exciting things are coming up as we prepare to end another year. Along with the excitement is also preparation for end-of-year exams. The Regents are slowly but surely coming up on us, and parents and students can find the Regents review schedule on the John Glenn High School website soon. The schedule shows what and when teachers are reviewing, and again, we wish all those students preparing for APs good luck. Thank you for your time and attention. I look forward to seeing you all in June.
Guess we missed a lot while you were out. That was great. So again, congratulations to all the students. We are going to go into the budget hearing portion of the meeting, so if the students have studying to do, you're certainly excused if you'd like to be.
Thank you all for attending.
Mr. Lamena, you get to go home and celebrate with your family.
Good to see y'all.
Mark said good things about you.
Okay, here we go. Dr. Bossert, take it away. Okay. Present what we've presented. Can I have a motion to enter the budget hearing? Mrs. Weiss, Mrs. Manolito, second. All in favor? 5-0.
I'm not sure if there's anyone present who hasn't already become intimately familiar with the budget. So if it pleases the board, I'm going to go a bit more quickly through the slides than I have in the past. We have now made this budget presentation to the Board of Education on 2 occasions. We've made it to the Elwood Civic Association last night, the Old Chester Hills Civic Association last week, and to each of the faculty and staffs within our buildings, with only Boyd remaining. Monday night, while I was home celebrating my daughter's 17th birthday, Ms. Dunkel and Dr. Hull really did an expert job in making this presentation to our PTA Council, where I believe all the PTAs unanimously voted to support the budget moving forward. So I thank the PTA for their support, and I thank Dr. Hull and Ms. Dunkel for filling in. But I do want to make sure that the board and community is crystal clear with what we're asking folks to vote on. I know May 21st rolls around, so we'll go quickly through the process. We set goals to make sure that this year's budget would allow us to maintain the excellence that our students know and deserve. So in order to do that, we looked at maximizing efficiencies. We looked to reduce but not eliminate when necessary. And we did as much collaboration with stakeholders as possible. Not only did we conduct conversations with the board and fellow administrators, we involved teachers, staff, community, parents, and students when looking for input about our proposals. So when we initially built the budget, we knew we had a revenue of just over $62.6 million, and our rollover expenses came to $64 million. Keeping everything we have in place, assuming all increases, we were $1.4 million short. We had a reduction in building aid. We knew that our increases would exceed our revenues, and our declining enrollment was not assisting us with achieving enough aid to maintain our total program. Why? Because in the last 10 years, our enrollment has dropped by 22.4%, or nearly 600 students. During that time, our staffing has not had parallel decreases in any of our areas. This chart indicates the teachers because it's what determines some of our program and offerings. But you can see that while we have decreased by 600 teachers, by 600 students, if you look at the 18-19 school year, we have 2 more teachers than we had 600 students ago. So as our aid is largely based upon the number of students we enroll, unfortunately, this is not a ratio we can continue to maintain. So we had to think about how we were going to make these necessary reductions. So in these collaborative discussions, we talked about potentially increasing our fund balance allocation. Now that would be detrimental to the overall fiscal health of the district, so we didn't support that. We talked about potentially exceeding the tax cap, but we know by now in our region and across our state, and here specifically in Elwood, that tends not to be supported by local taxpayers. So we did not seriously consider that. So the last and only option was to reduce expenses. Before we talk about how we reduced, it's important that I think we focus on all of the things we were able to achieve in the past and that we're able to maintain moving forward. I don't need to read the slide to you. Obviously, paper copies are available in the room and the presentation is posted online. But if you look bullet by bullet, we really are offering our students just a tremendously successful, diverse program that has something for everyone, regardless of their interests or talents. But then we had to talk about what would be reduced. So one of the things that was only recently added to the budget was additional administration. What happened? I could probably do it without the slides at this point. We had to make reductions to the recent addition to our HR director position, which had a savings of near $50,000. The work doesn't change, it's just going to be distributed amongst several desks rather than one singular desk. There was a lot of discussion about whether or not we could continue to print the calendars and bear the expense of the printing and the mailing. The PTAs have generously come forward to say that they were going to go ahead and bear that expense and then use the calendar sales as a fundraiser, and that money then is donated back to the district, so it's really a win-win. There was some concern about senior members of our community who were so positive about having received those calendars, but the PTA has assured us they'll supply us with enough calendars so that if seniors are looking for one to be given to them, we'll have them available. So I think that was a great compromise. Then we looked at some other reductions district-wide, and we looked at equipment that we would really liked having to purchase, but we'll have to wait for another year to do so. Some repairs that weren't as essential we removed off the charts. Every principal of each of our 4 buildings was charged with reducing their materials and supplies budget by 10%, which was over a $100,000 reduction. Textbooks and workbooks was an easier reduction to make because of how many electronic resources we're using now due to our one-to-one Chromebook initiative, so that was a near $27,000 savings. We made some changes to some contractual collaboration we do with BOCES and other outside entities with nearly a $50,000 savings. And then we had to look very carefully at tuition payments that we make to Long Island High School for the Performing Arts. Dr. Hull has put together a fairly rigorous selection process for identifying those students. And next year, we have the intention of sending one less student than we do this year, which saves the district nearly $18,000. Some more difficult decisions need to be made that will impact some class sizes and program offerings. We're looking very, very carefully at what will be next year's 5th grade and next year's 6th grade. Right now, each of those grade levels is right on that limit of where we feel comfortable opening the school year. So right now, the recommendation is to decrease one elementary section at Boyd and a 6th grade section at the middle school, and you can see the associated savings. Question came up during the presentation last night, why so discrepant? We didn't budget by the average cost of an employee. We had to budget to the dollar for this budget. So we looked at the specific employee who would be reduced if each of those reductions are made. And it's not that one salary is so much higher than the other. It's the cost of healthcare when one is individual and the other is family. There's significant difference between those two numbers. The special ed coordinator position, we currently have 2 individuals who help us with that K-12. It had once been 1. It is returning to 1. We're going to, reorganize some of those duties and responsibilities, so we'll have some fiscal savings in an administrative capacity, which hopefully will not impact the services students receive. The reading persistent for special ed, again, is not changing services to students, it's changing the person who will be delivering them. We're shifting some of those reading responsibilities to our reading specialists, which enables us to reduce our special ed staffing and reallocate it to another area. The others are really results of some declining enrollment and the less need. I'd like to point out that the reduction in our ENL, English Language Learners services, is due to the fact that many of those students are really achieving at a much higher level and require less service than they do this year, so we're able to make some reductions based upon them graduating through the program. World Languages was something we offered this year in the 6th grade that we are not moving forward next year as part of the instructional day. We'll do some different work with co-curricular as far as the exploration of languages, but as far as a class in the 6th grade, music is coming into the day and we'll take that slot. Dr. Hull looked very carefully at her budget and was able to make some targeted reductions to professional development. I know that $5,000 doesn't seem like a great deal of money, but it does represent just about 25% of the budget in that area. So it was a substantial reduction. We made a $10,000 reduction to our K-8 investment in teachers' colleges, so we'll be sending fewer teachers, fewer administrators to some of the conferences that take place at Columbia. AIS tutors and curriculum writing, we're not really changing what we're doing there, but we're changing the way we fund it. Dr. Ho was able to change some of her grant allocations to pick up some of these expenses due to the way we changed our summer school offerings, so that we're not changing what we're providing, but we're able to decrease from the budget. Substitute teacher salaries, well, we're sending fewer teachers to conferences and such, so we can make a parallel deduction to our substitute expenses. Athletic supervision, we're using security, so we're able to make again, a small reduction in comparison to our total budget, but not insignificant compared to that budget line. And then some extra class assignments we're able to take back because our enrollment is not what it once was. Ms. Dunkel really was charged with taking very careful looks at our real expenses as compared to what's budgeted, and she found 2 lines that she was able to make fairly significant reductions from that we feel are more in line with what our actual expenses will be for the employees' retirement system and then termination pay benefits. This is probably a better calculation of what our actual expenses will be, so we reduced those budget lines. And then a very, very difficult reduction to make because of the people associated with us were the reduction of 7 teacher assistant positions. We are shifting the way we are providing special education services. Dr. Hull did an exemplary job explaining position by position to the PTA where these 7 reductions were. I won't repeat it, but it really doesn't change the program offerings to students, it's changing the way they are staffed. So in summary, we are able to maintain the largest percentage of our program services and staffing that we had in 18-19 for 19-20. And really the most substantial change for our program will take place here at the middle school, where music becomes part of the instructional day. This is something we understand parents have been looking for a very long time, to do away with that early drive to the middle school. And it also helps us with some equity, because to this point, students who weren't able to find transportation to the middle school weren't able to participate in our performing groups here. So we feel very good about this change, and we're also increasing the level of music instruction that our children will receive in this building. So the standard of excellence that we have come to expect and deserve will certainly be maintained in 19-20. On April 1st, the state of New York, state of New York settled the budget, and they did a lot of things along with the budget settlement, like making the tax levy legislation permanent, requiring everyone to wear seatbelts in the backseat of their cars, giving release time to all state employees on election days, and adding $1 billion to the education budget. That was very exciting. I got emails from members of the board and community asking how that would impact our $1.4 million gap. And there were some assumptions made that we'd be able to do a lot of restorations of things that we had targeted for reduction. Well, our share of the $1 billion was $59,716. So our problem was not solved. We didn't turn down the money, but what we will do with it is we will allocate it to personnel codes to give us a little bit of flexibility moving into next year. That's the equivalent of approximately half a teacher. So that made our final budget proposal to the board at $62.728 million, which is what the board adopted, which is exactly equivalent to the tax levy cap increase of 2.56%. That is at the tax levy cap, which means our vote only requires a simple majority of 50% plus one, and we are very hopeful that the community will show similar support as they have in the past for our tax cap friendly budgets.
Thank you. So what does the 2.5% tax cap increase look like to taxpayers? Based on that number and in average assessed value of $3,500, we're looking at a possible increase of $103 per household. Keep in mind, this is based on information we received from the tax assessor's office, so it is a rough estimate. The good news regarding that is that there was a slight increase in the community overall to assessed values due to seasons at Elwood being built, down on Elwood Road. Roughly 65% of that community is now on the current tax roll, and they anticipate an additional slight increase in the following budget year, with the remaining units being added to the tax roll. So instead of declining assessed values over the last few years, we look like we're turning around and going slightly up instead of down.
Can I ask you a question on that slide? Sure. So if I'm looking at it, where it says, without just using the highlighted number, the 97.95, that's what my tax bill says is my school taxes, correct?
Right, if you have an assessed value of roughly $3,500.
Okay, so but just looking at the taxes portion,
Mhm.
if I look at my property tax bill and I look at school tax, that's the number that we're talking about there.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
I could expect mine, if I'm in the middle there,
Mhm.
that I'll be paying $103 more in my next.
Tax bill,
Tax
yes,
bill.
correct. And we are in the process of having a tax calculator placed on our website for residents to utilize.
One of the things that we've enjoyed highlighting throughout the community this year is that, yes, we are asking for a slight increase to household payments to help support our program. But we feel this year that we've really returned the favor. The board is very familiar with the fact that John Glenn High School was designated a Blue Ribbon School of Excellence earlier this year. And there are many studies that indicate that when that occurs within a school district, property values increase by 8 to 10%. Now, I shared that with some of our residents, and one of them challenged me on it, and went to Zillow to research home sales over the last 6 months in Elwood, and discovered that since John Glenn was designated a Blue Ribbon School in just that short period of time, the average cost of the home available on the market in Elwood has increased by 5% just in the short period of time since we
receive that designation. So we are trending towards proving the research accurate. So we feel that we are able to very directly tell our residents that they are receiving a return on their investment in our schools.
Just as a reminder, and as Dr. Bossert mentioned, staying within the tax cap of 2.56, a simple majority is required. If the budget fails to pass twice, the district would have to adopt a contingency budget, and that would result in additional reductions of almost $1.2 million. So at that point, to use Dr. Bossert's analogy, we've made cuts using a scalpel. If we had to go contingency budget, the chainsaw would come out. And at that point, we would open up, our reductions to all areas of all the schools and staff across the board, because that is a substantial amount of money to look for additional reductions to. And last reminder, budget vote, May 21st, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. At the middle school cafeteria. And I know in past years, I guess the time this year has been changed from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. to assist residents who could not make the previous time. I think it was 3 p.m. 2 to 10. So the time was changed.
Last year, the board took action to change our voting times to 6 to 9 p.m., which is very consistent with our region. Whereas the 2 to 10 p.m., we heard some feedback from some of our residents that just didn't work for them. And when we looked at the hourly voter turnout, we had a significant portion of our community vote prior to that 2 p.m. So it was good to see that the change was well received. Dr. Sapienza, the principal of this building, has made accommodations so we can continue food service and typical operations within our cafeteria while holding the vote on the other half. And we will have additional security guards in place at the middle school for the day of the vote to both guide voters, parking, and to make sure that no one is entering the interior portion of our building. Something else I'd like to share, the board is well aware that we received guidance from the Department of Justice earlier this year that indicated that there is new regulations in the state of New York in Suffolk County that require all municipalities, including school districts, to print all materials relating to a vote in both English and Spanish. The percentage of Spanish-speaking residents in Suffolk County has reached a point where the Department of Justice requires that all printed materials are printed in both English and Spanish. And in addition, translators need to be available for days of votes at the facility. So we will have staff members on hand at the vote who are bilingual. And you probably noted that the budget materials that have been sent home have been printed in both English and Spanish. I will share that there was substantial costs associated with translation and interpreting services. We received no additional aid to do that, but we were legally required to comply with that regulation. I have to ask the board permission to answer questions from residents, but I'm pretty sure they'll give it in like 30 seconds. Are there any questions from the board?
Any questions or comments about the budget from the board? We've heard it before, so thank you again for that excellent presentation. I'm going to open it up for resident remarks. The board encourages all residents to attend its meetings. This section of the agenda affords them the opportunity to speak. Persons wishing to speak should identify themselves and any organizations they represent at the meeting. Comments related to district business or any agenda item should be kept as brief as possible and may not exceed 3 minutes. Questions or comments concerning matters which are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and may be discontinued by the president. Public discussion of matters relating to staff, students, or others at which their reputations, privacy, or right to due process could in some way be violated is prohibited. So we'll open it up to resident remarks. Can you just step up? Is the microphone is up there?
August Analianis, I'm a resident of Elwood. Just a quick question about the Spanish speakers in Elwood School District. What percentage do they represent? Roughly.
Our E&L population is hovering, actually I know the number of students, it's less than 2% of our population are total E&L students, and not all of them are Spanish speaking. The regulation to print our items in a bilingual nature is due to regional population of Spanish-speaking individuals, and every school district was required to comply. Some questions were raised by colleagues who had predominant languages in their community that were not Spanish, that were a much larger percentage of non-English speakers in a different language. But the Department of Justice guidance did not give such flexibility.
Hi, I have a quick question. I have to introduce myself.
Who are you?
Yes, Agape Bell, resident representing just myself. I've heard the presentation many times, but what's been in my head, the slide that you added a few presentations ago with the enrollment numbers.
Sure.
At what number of children enrolled in the district do we have to get to consolidate buildings? Harley and Boyd.
Yeah, right now, and that question has come up from members of the board as well. Right now, we're not close to that number. If we were to try to combine all of our programs into either Holly or Boyd, we would have to drastically increase class sizes to make that happen and reduce our number of sections. While we have 6 sections per grade level, and all of the small instructional spaces that we use for both special education classes and pull-out services, we don't have nearly the room in either building to make that type of transition.
Okay, so.
We're not close to that conversation.
Okay, so when I do the math, keeping, let's say, using 22 as the ideal number per group, I don't know how many rooms are at Boyd. So if we get to, instead of like 2,077 children, I mean, you don't know what the number is. If this keeps trending, we lose 100 kids a year. Do we get to like 1,200 in the district?
What's interesting about the enrollment trend, when we compare it to the projected study, we've leveled off. We're not losing the number of students. This year's first grade, this year's kindergarten, and our projection for next year are equivalent. So we're maintaining our current enrollment over the last few years, with the caveat that a large number of students that register are non-English speaking. So we have some additional services that come along with those new entrants. But the families moving in have really leveled off, and when we see +5, we see -5. So our enrollment has been rather flat over the last few years.
We're expecting about the same. Okay, I was just curious because if this continues, do we go to 0 or is it going to be a steady state?
And candidly, Mrs. Bell, the reductions that we're seeing are not as drastic as some of our neighbors who have found that they're able to close buildings and consolidate resources and discuss mergers and things like that. Our enrollment decline has really leveled off in the last few years, and with some new residents and such moving in, I'm not sure if that'll impact us directly. The Seasons is a 55 and over community, but you're not prohibited from having children when you're over age 55, so we're not sure of how that'll affect our enrollment when that is done. And I'm hopeful to see our enrollment either remain flat or increase, because I think we have a wonderful program to offer to our residents.
Me too. Thank you.
Mr. Tomio?
I was going to touch on that as well as Bill, and I'm going to be very careful how I speak this time, because I made an elderly comment, if you will, at last meeting. I'm very, very careful on how I make the next comment here.
Good idea.
The young, older people in the community, the ones over 55, I've seen in our neighborhood, a lot of houses go on the market, so that demographic I spoke to at the last meeting, who does make up a good portion of the votes in our district, is also putting their house on the market, maybe because of the 5% increase from the Blue Ribbon, maybe because the market's doing well. So I think we're going to see, although enrollment's dropping and we've leveled off, we may even see either staying neutral or an increase. I don't think we're at that consolidation point, but the trend we have to definitely, we're small enough that any effect does affect us, so we'll, as a board, watch out for that.
Any other resident remarks?
Yes.
Seeing none, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Oh, sorry. Can I have a motion to close the budget hearing? Mrs. Malalita, second by Mr. Tomio, all in favor, 5-0. You have to enter, right? Okay, Dr. Bosser. Superintendent's report.
Okay, as the budget was the main focus tonight, I'll be very brief, but there are two updates I'd like to give to the board. I actually had an extensive dialogue today with one of the representatives of the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office, Dina Canjero, who is a former member of the Elwood Board of Education, now working in a different capacity for the District Attorney's Office, called me as looking for representatives from the Superintendent's Association to participate in a panel discussion of how we are going to go about effectively implementing the red flag regulation that was passed by the state of New York during the budget process on April 1st. And I've discussed it with the board, but for those of you that don't recall, the governor introduced legislation that would increase a school official's capacity to identify an at-risk student who may be having mental health issues that lead to violence. The governor is trying to do everything within his authority to make sure that tragedies as the one that took place in Colorado 2 days ago never happen in the state of New York. So this red flag legislation authorizes school personnel to make reports directly to a judge when they feel there is a student at risk of committing violence. So that I have been asked to sit on a panel that will help to figure out how that's going to be effectively implemented in partnership with law enforcement, in partnership with governance, to make sure that we have a procedure in place in every school district in the county so that when these threats do arise, we can expedite the process as effectively as possible. So that's an exciting opportunity, ties back to board service, and I will be happy to report back to the board after the meeting on, I believe it's going to be held on May 23rd. Another interesting contact that I had recently is there is a small island law firm that is looking to begin a class action suit against Juul, the leading manufacturer of vape products. The class action suit would be largely based upon the fact that they feel that the vape manufacturing agencies directly target children and minors who the devices are not intended for. And one of the things this firm has asked assistance in collecting is data from school districts of the expense associated with vaping. When we look at what school districts spend to add vape detectors and security to patrol, to make sure students aren't vaping, plus the cost of administrative time and support staff time when they are caught vaping, plus the cost of home instruction after they are suspended for vaping, and any legal associated fees in accordance with those penalties, the numbers are astronomical when combined as a county. So this firm is looking to do some work to help push back. So I was asked to help to collect some of the data that will help to do that, and that's a meeting coming up the first week in June. I'll be happy to report back to the community on that work as well. I think our high school principal and every high school principal in the region can say that is the #1 growing concern amongst our students, certainly in the county, and I'm sure far more widespread. And yes, middle school as well. And that concludes my happy report for the day on vaping and school violence.
Thanks, Dr. Bosser. And thanks for always keeping us updated and being an integral part of organizations outside the school that affect us.
I like to keep busy, Mrs. Freed.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to invite Mr. Shanahan up now and to give an update on the Health and Nutrition Committee work.
I'm going to do that for Mr.
There
Shanahan.
you are.
Mr. Shanahan did an excellent job outlining a memo to the board.
Mr. Shanahan's like, you are inviting me up.
Mr. Shanahan did an excellent job outlining a memo for the Board of Education, updating you all on the work of the committee that's taken place during the year. If any member of the board has a specific question for Mr. Shanahan, I know he is present this evening, but he was not instructed to prepare to make a presentation.
I apologize. So, just an update for the community members that are here. We had a new health and wellness policy regarding safety of children with allergies in the classroom, and we made a number of changes in the classroom. with a policy that was passed last year. I believe we are going to have a meeting to evaluate those changes, how they were implemented, if there anything needs readdressing, that kind of thing at the end of this year. Get feedback from what's going on in the classrooms to see if we were successful with this change of policy. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, excellent. Any questions or comments about that? No.
It's a positive comment. I just really like that you were going to reevaluate it and see how after 1 year, how it went and what works, what doesn't. It's great.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. We are up to consent agenda. I believe we have some very nice thing, or we are not.
We skipped
Oh, here we go. Accepted.
residents' remarks once again because we closed the budget
Okay.
hearing and now this is the regular.
Well, first let's do, all right, so we'll go back to resident remarks. Does anyone have any further resident remarks? So I'll read it if we do. No? Seeing none. I'm going to ask Mrs. Mamalito to speak to donations tonight.
Good evening. I'd like to recognize the anticipated approval of the donations from the Elwood Booster Club, $3,470.54 to support the purchase of a poster printer, technology support, and additional supplies for John Glenn High School. $1,246.56 to support the purchase of materials to construct new signs at Harley and Boyd. And Dr. Bossert, the children in the technology department will be making those signs, correct?
That is correct.
Which is a great collaboration. $9,037 to purchase and install a new sound system at John Glenn Gymnasium, which is really, really needed.
Yes.
Kudos to Mr. Shanahan for making that request.
Yes.
And we also received $2,000 from Robert and Janet Gilmore to establish a scholarship titled the Michael Samuel Gilmore Memorial Scholarship Fund. An unfortunate situation, but something positive coming out of it. And I just wanted to maybe read what the scholarship embodies. So the plan is to make an annual donation for both a male and female college-bound senior who, like Michael, exemplified excellent character, scholarship, empathy, and care for his fellow students, respect for school staff and teenagers and teachers, and a commitment to the Elwood community. Each student will be awarded a $1,000 scholarship. Very, very nice.
Thank you, Mrs. Mamalito. Can I have a motion to accept the donations? Mrs. White, second by Mrs. Marcus. All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. We are up to the consent agenda now. I believe we have some tenure and some MOAs on this. Let's get a motion first. Mrs. Mamalito, second by Mr. Tomio. Questions or comments? Questions or comments? Everyone? All in favor? 5-0.
If I may, Ms. President.
You may.
The board just took action on some very substantial business items for the school district. To those who are watching from home, there were 9 members of our faculty who were just awarded tenure, effective at the start of the next school year, due to their dedicated and exemplary service during their probationary period, and 4 teacher assistants for the same reasons who were just awarded tenure by the Board of Education, which is the strongest sign of confidence in their performance that the board can offer, in that recognition of their efforts during the probationary periods and their expectations for excellence moving forward. So we will recognize and celebrate all of those individuals at the June meeting, where their supervisors will say some very kind words about them and introduce them all to you personally, where they'll be able to offer their thanks for your confidence. In addition to that, there were 2 memorandums of agreement that will bring contractual resolution to 2 of our most outstanding bargaining units. The board just approved a 5-year contractual agreement for the contract that would have expired in a 5-year additional contract for for the contracts that would have expired on June 30th for both our teacher assistant unit and our clerical unit. And I know the board wants to comment also, but I will just share with the board that the negotiations process with both of these units and their negotiating teams could not have been more respectful, courteous, mutually understanding, reflective of both our financial position and the needs of the individuals. I really have experienced a large number of negotiations, and some of them can be very difficult, some of them can be very laborious, and some of them take a great deal of time before agreement can be reached. None of those apply to the conversations we had with either the clerical unit or the teacher assistant unit. They are wonderfully dedicated individuals who had the best interests of the school district in mind as much as they did the best interests of their members. And I really can't profess to the board and the community strongly enough how well I think the negotiations resulted for both the unit members and the district. And to have 5-year agreements in place with these individuals who we so respect and admire for their contributions to our students, I'm very thankful for the support from the board in order to do that. I'm sure the board would like to comment, but I know that Ms. Lopedro, the president of the teacher's assistant unit, has offered some written thanks that I will share with the board. And I know Ms. Scuderi, the president of the clerical unit, may have some words she'd like to share as well.
I just want to thank all of you for supporting our unit, as we have tried to do our best every day to support administration, faculty, and staff. This is the first time we've had a 100% ratification vote since I'm here, and there was an awful lot of smiles in that room on Monday morning that I'm not used to seeing. So, both my partners here and myself, we thank you very much for the unit. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. So I guess first we want to say thank you for your service to Elwood, clerical staff, Terry, the TAs. That's the most important thing. But we spoke, Dr. Bosser presented the final contracts tonight to us prior to the meeting, along with Mr. Block, the attorney, who did some of the negotiations. And just as you haven't been through something like that, and you haven't had a unanimous vote, we haven't heard something like that in a while either. So it just... Did you?
Yes.
Excellent. So it really seemed like it was a team effort, a cooperation. I thank you, Dr. Bosser, for the culture changing. We're happy about it. We're positive. And congratulations, and thank you for your service. Anybody else?
I mean, not to repeat, but kudos to you. I'm so thrilled that everybody's thrilled, and it was respectful and collaborative, and this was always the vision for this district, and Dr. Bossert and the attorneys also did a fantastic job. So thank you, and we appreciate everything that you do for us, and congratulations to all of the staff, faculty and staff that received tenure this evening. Congratulations, job well done.
We look forward to honoring them in June. Anybody else?
Great job.
Ditto.
Ditto.
Got it. We are up to a reading of, first reading of a policy, and this is a reading on student attendance policy. And Dr. Bossert, can you just review a little bit about ESSA and why we are looking at the attendance policy at this time?
Certainly. NYSBA, the New York State School Boards Association, reviews all policies that they recommend to districts whenever there are changes to state regulations or state law. One of the policies that NYSBA reviewed on our behalf was the attendance policy. Because of the adoption with the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is a federal regulation or law, there are things that states need to do to be in compliance with federal regulation. So the New York State School Boards Association has a team of attorneys that review each policy and rewrite some language to make sure we're in compliance. So the policy that's being recommended to the board this evening for first reading is reflective of the changes made by NYSBA Council, which we have reviewed at our local level to make sure it's in compliance with what our expectations are moving forward for our students. ESSA will have several measurements to measure our district's performance, and one of them is we need to increase student attendance. There is a perception from the federal level and the state level that there's a direct correlation between student attendance and achievement. We agree. So the criteria to see attendance improve year to year is a challenge that's been placed before us. Elwood is in a unique position in that the 10-year study of our student attendance has the daily attendance rate at 96%. Our students do a great job of attending school. 10 years ago we were at 96%, we're currently at 96%. So our challenge is to improve from there. So what we need to do to improve from our 96% is really look at specific students who have demonstrated chronic absenteeism and put practices in place that we believe will help them to attend school more regularly. So that is what we have done. The attendance policy is something that has been reviewed through many stakeholder groups, K-12, for the last year and a half. This was not a surprise, we knew it was coming. So we think we have put together some plans that will really help to curb both absences and latenesses, as well as unexcused absences from school. The policy, however, speaks more generically, whereas the regulation that we continue to work on and develop will be far more specific in nature. Tonight, we ask the board to consider the policy for first reading.
Can I have a motion to accept the first reading of the policy, not the regulation, the policy? Yep, we will, after, in between. Motion, Manuelito, second, Tomio, questions or comments?
I just had a question come to me. Since attendance is one of the indicators that ESSA gives our designation for our school, I remember in communication you mentioned that not just the general attendance of our schools or our students, which is at 96%, but they also look at all of these indicators, attendance being one of them, by various demographics.
Correct.
Like gender, population. If we have an increase in one of those populations for attendance, that would count as an increase, even if our overall maybe stays stagnant? So it gives us more of an opportunity to see an increase when we feel like we're pulling, water from a rock, or no?
Mrs. Marcus, I would be guessing
Okay.
if I attempted to answer your question. We are still receiving a good deal of training and support in implementation of ESSA, and that's a great question, and I don't know the answer. So we will make sure that before we finish our training with the state on ESSA, we have clarity on that question.
Yeah, it just was a curiosity, because I feel like 96 sounds high, and what happens when we're at 99%? We still have to improve.
It's a wonderful question.
And then can you also discuss, just for the community members, maybe reading all of the documents at home, just give clarity to the difference between policy and regulation and the flexibility or lack thereof between the two?
I'd be happy to. Policies are reviewed and adopted by the Board of Education, and this board put together a subcommittee, which is Mrs. Weiss and Mrs. Marcus, who help to review policies that are brought to the board in advance of the full board reviewing them. So some modifications are made at the subcommittee level before brought to the board. The board has an active policy manual. All of the board's policies are available and searchable using board docs on our website. Type in keywords and the policy you're looking for will pop up. And the policy is what governs the school district. The board's major responsibility is to create and enforce policy. And the policies become the laws of our school district. Attached to many policies is a regulation. Regulations are written and developed by the superintendent of schools in cooperation with the administration and the appropriate stakeholders. Regulations are ever-changing and fluid. Policies go through a very formal process with the Board of Education where they're adopted at a public meeting, typically after a first and second reading. whereas regulations can be changed daily if approved by the superintendent of schools. So very often our policies will cite the adjoining regulation to help bring clarity and further information in the interest of transparency to our community. But the regulations are not governed or nor adopted by the board, but effective administrators make sure that the board is very comfortable and familiar with what those regulations are.
Mrs. Weiss?
So, just to, again, be clear on that, the policy is that we're looking at tonight with the attendance, that's really driven by changes in what the state has sent down to us, but Ms. Besant, correct? Okay, so they're really, it's just looking at the policies, and for those at home that are looking at it, it's really terminology that has changed for the most part in there.
In accordance with the new federal regulations from the Every Student Succeeds Act.
Okay.
Every district in the state will have to examine their attendance policies due to the change in federal regulations, yes.
Okay, and the regulations work in tandem with that.
The locally developed superintendent's regulations will help to support the implementation of the policy.
Okay.
Okay, so we had a first and a second of the first reading. All in favor of the first reading? 5-0. The second reading for policies are one for unsafe school transfers, which is sort of not really relevant to our district, but has to be in our policy for legal reasons?
Yeah, every school is required to have a policy that speaks to unsafe school transfer choice. It's required by the state of New York, but it would be impossible to implement in the Elwood School District. Unsafe school transfer applies to districts that have multiple elementary schools, multiple middle schools, multiple high schools, so that if you are, I'll pick one out of a hat, if you're a resident of the Smithtown School District, which has Smithtown High School East and West, and East is identified as an unsafe school, parents would have the right to request their child to be transferred to West, which is identified as a safe school. I'm picking on Smithtown because they would never find themselves on such a list, but that is what the policy is intended for. There are districts like Elwood where there is no applicable value of the policy, but we are required to have it on record.
So we're required to have it, it does not apply to us, and we have no liability by having a policy.
Correct.
The second policy that is up for second reading is staff accommodations under the American with Disabilities Act. It doesn't look like we made a lot of changes there, just updating the policy that we reread it and it's acceptable. Is that everybody's understanding? The student health services, I asked Dr. Bosser to tweak one or two things in there, just that we are treating overdoses of opioid overdoses, not preventing them with Narcan. There were a few little things, but nothing, there's information in there on training of staff with EpiPens and Narcan. There are a lot of regulation, policies about children bringing medications to school and what our policy is about that. No real serious changes to what we've had before, correct? Just wording
Correct.
differences. Anybody have any questions about that second reading? Okay, can I have a motion to accept the second reading? Mrs. Marcus, Mrs. Manuelito second, all in favor, 5-0. Okay. We are up to the third resident remark. Does anybody have any intention of making a resident remark for the third time? No? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Mrs. Weiss, second by Mrs. Marcus, all in favor? 5-0. Thank you all for coming and congratulations.